All right, welcome back, everybody, to the ROI Online Podcast. And this is exciting because we're starting a new series of conversations with Will Leach. Will, welcome to the ROI Online Podcast.
It is my pleasure, Steve. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to these sessions for sure.
Yeah, so one of my favorite interviews was with you on your podcast. It's still one of the most popular downloads on the ROI Online Podcast, by the way.
All right, we had a good time.
Yeah, so Will, you're the founder of the Mindstate Group, and you've been doing this for 25 years. You've got a book, Marketing to Mindstate, which I really encourage folks to go read. It's a very popular book, and you have a lot of folks that follow you. But I think what everyone's going to enjoy is us talking over this series of conversations about various aspects. And like you and I were talking before we started, these things are extremely applicable in the time that we find ourselves right now.
No, that's right. I as we're talking, there's never been a better time than to optimize your messaging because I was even just writing about it this morning that we're just so inundated right now with advertising, and that it's even more important not just to be clear with your messaging, but also to be inspiring and to have motivations. And the best way to get and to motivate people to engage with your brand, and the best way to do that is right now behavioral science. It just is.
So so behavioral science, I always joke that Will Leach blinds you with science, but really what you're talking about is how to take your messaging and connect with the human deep inside of us. And I believe that's what's wrong with marketing. Marketing is broken because marketing is designed to communicate to this faceless, nameless consumer. And really, when you think about the folks that need your services or appreciate you, they have names, they have families, they have dreams, they have wishes. And I love the story at the beginning of your book. You want to kind of talk to us just a little bit. I think it's a great way to tee up everything, but give us a little bit how you were before that birth and how you were right after.
Yeah, so I started the book off trying to kind of define a concept. And here's what I think everybody can relate to this idea. So I came from a very structured home, military background. I was in the military myself. So I love order, I love plans, I love processes, and I've always have. And so when my wife Melanie was pregnant, we went through I developed a process that created a system to where we're going to find the perfect daycare option for my hope to be, very healthy and loving son, Nicholas. Mm-hmm. And so what I talk about is I had all these plans in place. We had actually narrowed down some of the different daycare options. Both my wife and I were both working at PepsiCo at the time. So I kind of took lead on this. And one night, about 5 weeks before Nicholas was to be born, he was born. He was a premature baby. And I got to the hospital and we didn't expect it. We thought it was just kind of one of these funny, like, I guess, like the Braxton contractions or whatever. I remember there's Braxton something or other. And so we just thought she's having contractions. It's going to go away. Well, even our doctor thought that. And boom, 3 hours later, Nick is born. He's fine. He's healthy. Everything's awesome. But I wasn't prepared emotionally or kind of mentally to take on that responsibility. I just wasn't because I thought I had 5 weeks. And so as the story goes, I literally, my wife was awesome. She said, just go home and sleep, bring back my bags. I didn't bring a bag to the hospital with her. It was like 7 a.m. And I looked across the street and there was a daycare. And I remember thinking I was so, at that point, not ready to be a dad, but I saw this daycare and it happened to be on the list, but not at the top of the list. And I went across the street and I opened up the door and I looked at the front door and because I didn't know what to do, but I knew I had to do something to be a dad. I had to do something. And I signed Nicholas up for daycare right then and there. I put down the money. I didn't even ask any questions. And I remember thinking to myself, that's so not like me. I go through process. I do less checks. I do pros, cons. And I made a very important decision without talking to my wife. And it worked out great. But the story is that as a human being, I could be very methodical and rational. But yet in that moment, the best dad I could be was to go get him daycare that he wouldn't be using for months, but it just took a need that I had, and it met that need. And I'm happy for it, and I was excited about it. But that's how the story goes. And I think to your point, Steve, it's this idea of the human. If you messaged to me, if you understood me as Will Leach, the professional corporate military guy, you never would have been able to tap into that emotion that I had when I was the newborn dad, or newborn father, I guess, who had to make himself do something to be his dad. And that was the very first thing I did as a dad. I started cutting the umbilical cord. And so that's what I'm talking about in that book, is it's these moments of humanness that we tend to forget in these big corporations that have lots of data, and we study people methodically, and we peel them apart. And at the end of the day, like you said, I'm a dad, I go to church, I try to run businesses, I'm a father, I'm a husband, and that's what we need to start marketing to. That's what we need to message to, because we're all those things wrapped up into a big ball of love, basically.
Totally. You think about right now, you have all these businesses that, let's say they were the methodical dad of, business as usual. We're going to do this in the next 3 months. We're going to do this. And then all of a sudden, we've had this premature explosion of unknowns just dropped in our laps. All of a sudden, we can't shake hands, or we're not supposed to do business like we've always done. Never occurred to us that it would ever be this way. And here we are trying to figure out what we should do, and with what we have to work with. And it's such a same scenario as you're talking about.
What's interesting about what you just said, Steve, is I never even picked up on this, but we're even less human now, because you're right. We can't reach out and hug our customers. We can't touch them. We can't see their faces in many cases. And so as bad as it was 3 years ago, 2 years ago, you can make the case it's even dramatically worse now, because we're not engaging. We don't have the one-to-one face conversation. So it's even more of a time for us to bring our humanness to marketing, because I think that's, if you can be human and kind of be there for your customers, you're going to be above and beyond anything else that's out there right now. You just are, if you can figure that out.
Yeah. So, people, so what are people doing? They're doing the best they can to consider options for solutions that they still need from a distance online. And so when they come to your platform, and whatever it would be, some aspect of your messaging that's delivered by, whether it be Facebook or your website or whatever that may be, this is the time to really upgrade and really get your act together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think, what you'll find out through our conversations is that it doesn't have to be expensive, and it doesn't have to be long-term. It doesn't take a long term to do some of these basic things. The psychology and the thinking has been out there for decades. It's just a matter of taking the thinking that's been out there and proven and putting into something that you can do immediately. And so hopefully we'll get down to some of these tactics over time that you can make very small tweaks to your messaging, very small tweaks to your relationships to make really, really big difference. And we've seen it in our business and for our clients as well. Small things can make a big difference if you're smart about what you're doing, and human, maybe is what you would say, human about what you're doing.
Yeah. You think about all the forces against us, so to speak, as small businesses right now, even to hide the faces of the humans. And it's like minimizing the way that we were designed to thrive.
Mm-hmm.
That's to me, that gives me the conviction to really step up and do better right now. Yep. So let's talk about, I think the thing that I really loved about your book, the epiphany from me, is in marketing, we want to get our messaging clear, mm-hmm. but we also want to make sure that we're designing this marketing to speak to the persona that we're serving. And so the traditional way of designing personas has been, a lot of times it's on the age of the person or the stage of life or whatever those are. But I think the big light bulb went off for me is that we have all these states of mind we're in that changes hundreds of times during the day.
Yep.
And so for me to realize that there's a commonality between all these ages, all these whether it's male or female or small business or big business or whatever it would be, that actually there's a state of mind that someone generally is in when they're considering a solution to a problem. Talk to us more about that.
Yeah, I came to this conclusion more than a decade ago when I was working at Frito-Lay. And I was working in something called Shopper Insights. And that's just basically where I was studying shopping behavior inside of grocery stores. And I used to do a lot of store walks. And so store walks, you just walk through different grocery stores. You see what competitors are doing. You see what the grocery stores, how they're trying to differentiate themselves. And oftentimes you do it with other people. And I remember standing in front of our chip aisle, and we were stacked next to a company called Hertz. And I said, we both had the same price. We both had very clear packaging, like they were pretzels. And I looked at it and I thought to myself, they're both clear. We both sell the exact same thing at almost the exact, really actually at the exact same price. I said, why one versus the other? Why one versus the other? And I can make the claim, yes, branding matters or whatever. But that was the point where I started thinking to myself, I wonder if there's something more about motivating. Like if everything is equal, then what makes you choose one item versus the next item? And that was my first thinking around, we got to understand moments of a decision because, and I think you actually nailed it, Steve. Anyone can think this way. Companies study you as a persona. They study you. So if you're Nike, you are studying people as athletes. And you probably have a segmentation out there that has everyone in America classified into some sort of a persona and into some sort of athletic, bent. But I'm more than an athlete. Like I said, I'm a dad. I'm an entrepreneur. I go to church. I try to work with my community. I'm a friend. I'm all these other things. But yet companies only speak to one element of that thing. And that one element, though may be important, I'm more than just that element. In fact, every day I talk about in the book that you go into these different mind states because you're fluctuating back between all these different roles that you play for, your community and your household. And it was this moment of clarity for me that said, we're not messaging to the moment. We tend to message to the person. And what we do as corporations and business out there is we think about the person in line of here's my company or here's what I want to sell you, as opposed to their people. And so what behavioral psychology gets into a lot more is around messaging to the moment. And so I've been trying to really focus a lot more on, yes, I'm an athlete, I'm all these other things as well, but I'm also a person that is influenced in the moment. So I can study the moment, or what we call mind states, the moment, your mind state in that moment. I can message to you in a very unique, empowering, influential way. And so that's what we talk about in the book. That's what I teach in my courses. And that's what you and I think are going to talk over the next couple of weeks about is these moments and how do you tap into these moments and message to these moments.
What I think is so cool about that is that, I'm talking about our brain, right? And our brain is involved in this. And there's the old brain, the brainstem. I call it the bodyguard, but that bodyguard's imperative, number one imperative is safety first. And it doesn't process language, but it immediately, it'll approve or disapprove. All decisions have to go through that bodyguard first. Yep. Bodyguard, no speak, but bodyguard is going to say you're safe or you're not here. Yeah. And I think that the beautiful thing that you're talking about in that state of mind is if you can convey in that split second, I get you and I understand you. That's the whole essence of what you're preaching.
Yeah, I'm safe. Yeah, saliency is what we call it, but that's the idea. The first, your mind knows safety almost immediately by how salient you are, or if you're talking to the intuitive self. And that's the easiest way of communicating safety and trust is that you sound like I would talk in my brain, right? How I talk to myself, it's very safe. If you use the same tonality, the same types of words, you're automatically safe and you're automatically trusted. And that's the best kind of marketing is intuitive marketing. I'm not convincing you of anything. You and I are just pals because we understand each other, and that you can do that with messaging very easy.
So that's amazing because in a split second, the brain decides that.
It does.
It does. And so it's not going to read a whole bunch of stuff. It's not, but immediately it's going to feel that. And so that's the biggest challenge, I think, for marketers is to go, oh, how do I quickly design this environment that I'm this potential prospect or customer or potential employee are in an evaluation moment.
Yep.
How do you design an environment? And so that's what I love about this. So one of the things you would need to do is to go, okay, so let's understand what are all the aspects of mind states. What's modifying that mind state or influencing it, and then you could start to really follow your system of evaluating that, and then start to design that. So there's a lot behind a lot of thought behind this. How did you start to kind of go down that path and figure out a system or a framework to start to reveal all those?
Yeah, it's a good question and a funny story, at least for me. So I did not come up as a psychologist, sociologist. You know this about me. I'm actually self-trained. What I did was I went to Texas A&M and got a degree after the military in applied econometrics. So I studied data, and I used data to make decisions or help decision making for companies. And I just fell into a role over at PepsiCo where I had to understand shopping behavior. And as the story goes, I ran a study where the data would have proposed that one thing would have happened, but an entirely different action happened. And it was a multi-million-dollar error, or it could have been. So I had to learn, why is it that the data would suggest that one action would happen, but then no consumers did this, no shoppers did it. And it's all of a sudden emotion. It's human being, right? It's the human side. So what I did was I was given about a year. And basically I had a senior level executive say, you got to figure out what happened in this, or we're going to have to make some big changes. And so I started studying behavioral science, anything that had to do with psychology. I started reading. And what's great about my perspective is that I didn't come from academia. So I came from the business world. And what that allowed me to do was study one social science, in this case, goal theory. Started studying people's goals. Like how do people go, why do people go after one goal for a while and then they go after another goal a couple minutes later? Like what's that whole situation about? An academic, somebody who works for a university, may study that for 10, 15, 20 years of their career, just that. I wasn't under that kind of constraint, right? I had to figure all this stuff out in a year. So I'd study it, and then I'd go, well, okay, so now I understand how people formulate goals, but what makes them go after that goal? Like, that's a totally different science. That's motivational psychology. So I'd study that. So what I ended up doing was, over the course of about a year, maybe 2 years, I was reading enough to where I started seeing bridges. And you guys would do this too. Like, it was my passion. I couldn't stop thinking about this stuff. I started forming bridges between different sciences to where we have a model now that has 4 different social sciences that bridges all of these into a model that'll help messaging. And what's great about it is that it's very strongly based in behavioral science. So there's decades of literature on each one of these pillars, these 4 pillars. I was lucky enough to see where somebody was talking about a situation using motivational psychology. I would read something about the same situation using behavioral economics and going, they're talking about the same thing. They just don't talk to each other because they're in totally different parts of the university. I just started formulating the bridges.
That's cool. I think that's one of the secrets to success, is starting to recognize maybe patterns in disconnected domains.
So true.
And they give you affirmation that you're kind of on the right point when you see that this framework or thought process is applied, and then you're starting to do it. Big, what I call enterprise accounts, have really jumped on this. You have a story where you're giving a presentation and they have jumped on this. But I think that what I'm excited about is the application for every entrepreneur, every teacher, every person that's in charge of trying to connect and communicate the value that they provide is important. So talk about the enterprise application, and then you're starting to see, you started to recognize there's a real big need for this in small to medium-sized businesses.
Yeah, it was. So I've been doing this work for very large corporations, as you said, enterprises, either teaching this model or actually doing the research and the marketing consulting. Been doing it for the better part of a decade. And what you find out is whether you're talking in the pharmaceutical space, or you're talking to somebody, a manufacturer of snacks, or you're talking to a company that does pesticides, stuff like that, healthcare, across all these different industries, you start realizing that we're not really talking about a big corporation model. We're not even talking about an industry model. You start thinking we're talking about a human model. And I actually start, once you start reading this stuff more and more, you start realizing you even use this stuff in your own home, right? I helped a local, I live here in Dallas, and I helped a school board election. A buddy of mine was running for the school board. No, it's not even a paid thing, right? But I'm like, why couldn't we help him get his message clearer and more motivating to help him become a part of a very small local school board. And it was in those little moments when you're taking it yourself, when you're using it to help your friends, that you think it's a human model. That's all it is. It's how I coach my own employees. I use this idea on how I even write copy for my own website. And at that point, you start realizing this information has been used by governments, by political campaigns, and by the largest corporations for the last 5 years. And it's not that it's hidden, but they have resources that most small businesses don't have. And it's all available. It's all there. And so that's actually thinking, like, why can't we get this out to, Burrito Brothers down the road? These simple tools to help build, we talked about this. I believe the middle class of America will be built on entrepreneurs in the future. And so, and it's not fair that this stuff is being, this information is up there in the clouds in academia, and it's up there in these massive corporations like Amazon and Coca-Cola, et cetera, when the same tools can be given to the local CrossFit gym, to the local real estate agent, to the person who's just driving an agency. And so now's the time, because it's there, it's available, and more books and more people are doing this type of work every day.
Yeah, I think your comment about not fair, it's like every new thing is always immediately default. The people that are designing it, they envision it being applied into the enterprise. We just want to hit a big home run and retire. And yet here I call them the invisible heroes of the American economy. The people like you and me, there's so many of them, they risk everything. They put everything on the line. They borrow money on their personal credit. And yet they're designing solutions. They're hiring people. That's I have a heart for those people, and I really do. They really do need this, and there's a way to apply it.
Yeah, it's one of the most noble professions I think you can have, is to go out on your own and create a legacy for you and your family. And I know that personally, but I'm even more aware of it now in this economy, when we're seeing our friends and our neighbors going through some very incredibly tough times. And thinking the only way we're going to jumpstart this economy, it's not going to be jumpstarted through, a Procter and Gamble. It's not. It's going to be jumpstarted and revived through small businesses. And if you can't help small businesses, if you're not supporting your small businesses, you're only hurting the economy over the long term. We've got to jumpstart this economy. It's going to come through these incredible entrepreneurs, these people who, like you said, are risking it all. They decided to walk away from something to start their dream, and everybody's dream should have every possibility of success, and messaging is a large part of it. I think about the people who, the baker, actually, I'm talking about a pizza chain down the road. This pizza is literally the best pizza I've ever had. It's amazing. Something this dude does with the dough, and it's got this kind of a tweak on the dough that I've never had before. This guy, the chef, the owner, whatever, came up with this recipe at one point. This thing is incredible, his product, but he didn't go to learn about marketing and messaging. And so
Mm-mm.
why should his business fail when it's literally one of the best pizzas ever? He went out on like you said, he maxed out his credit cards, probably he's hiring staff. And the fact that he could go out of business in this economy because he just was never taught simple messaging tools that could get his word out there drives me insane, because that's no reflection of his company. It's a reflection of a small element that he was never trained on. And people like you and I need to help those types of people to help
Yeah.
them get that pizza out to the masses and make people happy.
The
Anyways,
people need
I'm
to,
passionate.
I mean, I don't think anybody would argue that the people need pizza.
That's right. Good pizza. Good pizza.
No, that is, so that I think that really highlights the opportunity here. I always say that your messaging is the biggest competitive lever that you can address first to really start to give you an advantage, to increase your potential to make it through what I call the gauntlet in my book.
Yeah.
And that's so important. And every person, even the person that loves making this dough, loves making this pizza, they deserve to be successful. They deserve to provide for their family just like everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
So that's our mission here. So let's talk about right now. I read one of your blogs recently. You talked about how many mind states are there? First of all, tell me how many mind states do you have illustrated in your book?
So there are 18 total mind states that you fluctuate through on any given day, but you basically have 18 total mind states.
Mm-hmm. And so your blog talked about right now, there was one primary mind state that everyone needed to really consider and adjust their messaging in the immediate situation of what's going on in our world right now.
Yeah, and it really comes down to all of the complexity and ambiguity and uncertainty in the world today. And so my company, basically, we monitor these mind states quantitatively. And we saw in March a massive jump in really 3 mind states, but one in particular, which I'm sure most of you guys can relate to. And it's because of, we have biological forces, right? Where people are scared for their health. We have economic forces. We're in a recession, and it'll be around for a while. We have political strife right now. And then we also have a racial injustice strife, right? So these forces have really elevated people's desire for security, like personal safety, but also psychological safety as well. And what we found very early on is people will desire to not lose any more security, which we call the cautious security mind state. On top of that, there's another 2. One is people's desire for control, because people just don't feel like they're in control right now. I mean, I made this case where people starting in April, for many people for many in the country, all of a sudden their home became a school, it became a restaurant, it became a movie theater, it became a place of business, and it became the home, all in the same week. And so people don't feel like they have control. I don't know if I have a job next week. I don't know if I'm going to get the stimulus check. When is it going to come out? So people's desire for control is also a mind state that is across so many decisions, Steve. It's not even just like one product. It's just like people, if you can tell people that I can help you gain control, even if it's something as small as what movie to watch, if I can control that, that's a big emotional desire people have. And then the last one is, we call it engagement, but people are just desire moments of a release and relaxation. It's the wine moment. It's just once a day, can I turn off the TV and just breathe? And I started seeing those 3 up in March. They carried over every month since then. And so I tell people right now, if you don't know anything about your customer, if you're just starting, I'm talking to anybody right now, any customer, I'd be saying, talk about security, not just physical security, but also emotional security. But also I'd be talking about control. We can give you greater control, or we'll give you moments of relaxation, because people are so stressed out. If you can just provide, whether it's a scented candle that you sell online, that could be enough just for somebody. Like, I'm seeing videos, Steve, of women putting themselves in their closet to cry, because that's their only place of solitude right now is a bedroom closet. Like when people lock themselves into their bedroom closets for a moment of release, that tells you something, that there's such a need for that. And so any products that are going to give people some sense of relaxation, some sense of control, or some sense of security, they're going big gangbusters right now. They just are.
Well, that happens to be the intent of these conversations, these series of conversations that I want to have with you, is to offer those that are wanting to really start to learn more about what Mindstate marketing can do for them, to give them more control, to give them more security. That's what the intent of this.
Yep.
Yeah, and relaxation, to relax. And it's, first of all, you're not the only one going through this, and it's okay.
Yep.
And we're going to make it. But how nice would it be to have a little clarity and empowerment to know that you could sit and address your messaging as one of your activities to invest in right now when things are different.
Yep. Like we said, Steve, it's not hard. What I'm trying to do is boil down 60 years of cognitive psychology into little nuggets, little words, small phrases that you can feel safe knowing that it's built upon a lot of data, but you don't need to know that. Like in the book, right? I remember, in the book, I remember this quote that I started the book on. I said, "This is for those who don't want to earn a PhD in psychology while reading." Like that's it. Like you need to make great pizza dough. I need to know about the psychology of it because that's my passion. That's what I gravitate towards. Other people, you need to make that scented oil. You need to make that pizza dough. You need to get that home sold. And so let me do what I do best in my passion so you can do what you do best in your passion.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about we're going to kind of start winding down here, but tell us a little bit about your workshops that you're offering and what are some of the things that folks can do to connect with you to learn more.
Yeah. So what I started doing in March, right after kind of all the economy started shutting down, is previous to March, I would go to companies, the largest companies in the world, to do workshops, to work with them with all their data. My team would go there and teach them how to apply this type of science to their messaging. We'd spend 2 days in person with them, going through these things together, leading discovery sessions, et cetera. Well, very quickly, you just can't go into a corporate office anymore, right? It doesn't work that way. I can't just show up at a corporate office. And so then, just like many other companies, we figured out, well, if we can't see our customers, what are we going to do? Well, the natural thing is we're going to do things online. And when I did a session online for a large financial services company, I sat there in the back of my head thinking I could do the exact same thing for hundreds of small businesses at the exact same time. I don't have to travel to one corporate office. I could actually do it right here, go through the exact same processes to help small businesses. And that's what we're doing. So it took us a couple of weeks to do. We now offer monthly workshops where people can come online. We spend 2 days together and I teach you the exact principles that I teach these major corporations. And we go through the exact same activities, but we do it virtually. And we just actually, we had for our July workshop was yesterday, and we're going to do it again tomorrow, as a matter of fact, for day 2, but they're 2-day sessions where we go through activities. I tell you about stories and my background. I actually bring my creative director on to talk about how he changes messaging. But what we do to make it more applicable to small businesses is we actually run for 2 days. We show you how, like literally step by step, how we used our methodology, messaging, to create a brand from the ground up. And now it's a very successful snack brand called Wicked Crisps. So, because I wanted to show you, like, I talked to 20 people. Here's what they said. Here's what I did with what they told me to derive this perfect messaging. And now the brand's going gangbusters. And at least in some part, they think it's because of our work with them. So that's how I'm trying to get this message out to the community. So we do these things once a month. And we're going to have another session in early September. Our next session is in early September. So you can learn all about this stuff at mindstategroup.com. And we have lots of free resources. You can buy the book there as well. But what I'm trying to do is teach you the exact same principles that I teach the largest companies in the world in a way that's easy for you to implement and to immediately increase sales for your company.
Totally. So, Will, they can connect with you on LinkedIn as well. You publish articles and things. They can keep
Yep.
abreast of what's going on is there. So, Will Leach, Marketing to Mindstates, the book's on Amazon. I'm trying to talk Will into reading it for Audible.
You still got to work with me on that.
Yeah.
I can't stand the listen to my voice.
No, your voice is good. But it's everyone goes through that same feeling.
Yeah.
All right, Will. So this is number one in a series of great conversations. The intent is to empower marketing directors, business owners, solopreneurs, students, how to really start to consider humans and connecting with humans because we are humans.
Amen. Well, I'm looking forward to working with you on this. It's really exciting stuff.
All right. Well, thanks, Will, for being on the ROI Online podcast, and we'll see you on the next episode.
All right.
All right. That's a wrap.
Nice. Thank you.